Live with studios in Midland and Odessa, you're watching CBS7 First Alert News at 9 on the CW West
Kids who age out of
Texas.
foster care, 60% of the female population will end up in the sex industry in some sort of way. Statistically, our young men will, 60% of them will be incarcerated at some point in their life.
Tonight on CBS7 News at 9, we hear from survivors, a business owner, and more local organizations in a special report that you'll only see on CBS7. Thanks for joining us for CBS7 News on the CW, and thanks for joining us live on the CBS7 YouTube. I'm Lauren Munt, and we start tonight with a special report. You've seen the headlines right here on CBS7. 30 missing children recovered after a trafficking operation. 7 arrested in joint human trafficking investigations. 14 victims found during a recovery operation. And most recently, 50 arrested during Human Trafficking Awareness Month. Despite those recovery operations and trafficking investigations, people, children, are still being abducted and trafficked right in our backyard.
I'm a young kid, surely nobody would hurt me.
13. That's how old she was when she was first trafficked, sleeping behind a gas station when she met him.
He was very nice. Even if I had saw him in a different scenario, I would have never thought that's not a good person or that's someone that I shouldn't trust.
It starts with kids who are homeless or at risk. Traffickers use these vulnerabilities to psychologically manipulate their victims.
I used to think that girls out there, everyone had a choice. And everyone didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice.
They just want a roof over their head, so they'll get themselves involved in abusive relationships and do whatever it takes just to have housing.
Sometimes it's just a matter of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The Permian Basin is considered a hot spot of human trafficking because of its position on I-20 and proximity to I-10. Even though it's a hot spot, there are organizations in West Texas that are working day in and day out to stop trafficking and help victims. The Basin Dream Center is one of them, offering transitional living for adults who are homeless, at risk, or have aged out of the foster care system.
So what we're finding out is I would say probably about 80% of our kids have experienced some form of trafficking.
We need a support system. We need a patient support system.
That's what the Basin Dream Center does, providing a home, a safe space, and a seat at the dinner table.
One of my favorite things that we do here is sit down at the table and have family-style dinners with them.
Without this support, trafficking survivors typically have a hard time returning to normal life and finding jobs. Saray Lara founded Unlimited Jewelry to provide survivors with a job, while also empowering them.
Each piece has a story. Somebody that has gone through darkness, unimaginable things have happened, but yet they're able to create something beautiful. And it's just a reminder of we're able to create beautiful things and we're not limited to our past. Our opportunities are unlimited.
All of this jewelry is survivor made, whether by survivors in the Permian Basin or from across the globe.
I do have partnerships with international anti-human trafficking organizations, but all of the jewelry that is not made by local survivors still contributes to local organizations here in the Permian Basin.
Purchasing from Unlimited Jewelry and donating to organizations like Basin Dream Center can have a major impact on survivors in the Permian Basin. But if you can't support financially, one of the best ways that you can help is education, knowing the signs.
Really, it's people that are close to you. It's a grooming process of gaining their trust. They use the vulnerability and use that against you.
You would think that someone who does that to you, you would be scared of them to the point where you won't trust them. No, but he had a way, of being the person who's hurting me, but also being my support system.
She wants a chance to succeed probably more than anybody else wants it for her, but the things that are hindering her are triggers and trauma and unspoken battle that she's not able to explain.
Christina Payne is another survivor and now advocate for victims of human trafficking. She's the founder of survivor-led nonprofit Within Reach. They help survivors deal with trauma using a technique called neurofeedback.
Neurofeedback is a form of biofeedback, and what it does is it actually uses the brain's natural reward system to retrain the different areas of the brain. We start with the body. It brings the brain back down to a resting place, a place of peace and calm, and then that way every other part of their life can then be restored.
Payne knows firsthand how healing the process of neurofeedback can be for survivors of human trafficking.
I began to heal, and it was because my nervous system was able to relax and rest, and so a lot of things that were bothering me didn't bother me anymore.
But this healing process takes time and patience.
Because there are people willing to help and they don't want anything from you.
And there is hope for a second chance.
There's always second chances, and there's third chances, and statistically sometimes there's 7 chances, but we're making a difference in their lives, and we want to reduce the trauma, and we want to produce successful kids and return them back into our community as productive adults.
They come in, we just had a young man that graduated with his electrical certificate, and he has cried so many times because he said, I never thought I could do this. And now he's living the life.
If you are a victim of trafficking or you know someone who needs help getting out of a bad situation, you can call the National Trafficking Hotline at 888-373-7888.
The problem most people fear is, what if this isn't human trafficking? What if I'm wrong? But that's not for you to worry about, because what if you're right? And if you're right, you may have just saved a life.
I'm worth something. I can do this.
For CBS7 First Alert News, I'm Lauren Munt. Today, Texas DPS reported its human trafficking arrests throughout the month of January in multiple operations across West Texas, including 6 from Odessa, 12 from Midland, 1 from Andrews, 1 from Seminole, all arrested for solicitation of prostitution, and dozens more from areas outside of West Texas, including California, Oklahoma, and Longview in East Texas. Dozens of law enforcement agencies are involved. For the full list of agencies and the names of those arrested, you can visit our website, CBS7.com. And Governor Greg Abbott has authorized lowering state and U.S. flags in honor of Midland City Councilman at large Dan Corrales. Mayor Lori Blong petitioned the governor to allow the flags to be lowered. Flags will return to full staff next Friday, February 9th. As for the future of Corrales' seat on the City Council, the City of Midland says that voters will decide who will fill Corrales' seat and that there is not an appointment process. This is not unprecedented. The city says this has happened multiple times over the past couple of decades. The City Attorney's Office is looking into local and state guidelines to make sure the City of Midland's next steps take place in accordance with the state constitution and the city charter. The city expects this to be addressed at the next City Council meeting on February 13th. All right, we're going to check your weather forecast now with Chief Meteorologist Tom Teefer-Teller. Tom, what can we expect?
Well, we are going to see a few changes coming up in the forecast. Today, though, temperatures 10 to 20 degrees above normal for this time of the year. We're all the way up to 80 in Fort Stockton, mid-70s across the Permian Basin. The warm spot was down towards Rio Grande Village, up to 81 degrees this afternoon. Currently, though, we're seeing quieter conditions. Live iCam in Big Spring showing things cooling off a little bit, but still very mild for the evening hours here in the start of February. 61 currently out at the Middle National Air and Spaceport, and we are seeing a little bit in the way of a south to southeasterly wind. That's going to try to bring in a little bit in the way of some moisture and some low clouds across parts of the eastern Permian Basin into lower Trans-Pecos. That'll come into play tomorrow afternoon as a cool front arrives across the area. So an isolated strong to severe thunderstorm generally along and east of the line from Big Spring down towards Rankin and the Dryden area and areas east. Large hail, strong damaging winds being the main threat if anything severe develops. And there's going to be a lot of wind too. In fact, high wind watch is up Friday evening through the daytime hours on Saturday into early Sunday. We could be looking at gusts 60 to 75 miles an hour across parts of West Texas. And this is going to kick up a lot of dust.
Thank you, Tom. And your health headlines now. Diabetes care is now more accessible in Odessa. Today, Medical Center Health System held a grand opening ceremony for its community diabetes clinic. The clinic will help low-income and non-insured diabetes patients who are age 18 and older. Medical Center Health CEO and President Russell Tippin says treating diabetes is a team effort.
Well, diabetes just doesn't affect the patient, it affects the entire family. And if you don't put somebody back in the right environment, their diabetes never gets any better. So it's what you're eating, how you're taking your medicine, your lifestyle, and that's why we want to address the whole family.
The clinic is a result of a unanimous Odessa City Council vote to award $500,000 in American Rescue Plan Act funds to MCH. All of that money goes towards treating patients. Clinic clients can access free diabetes screenings, treatment, and medication, plus other tests necessary for those with diabetes. And attention expecting mothers. The first West Texas Water Birthing Center is here. But that's not the only service that this center provides. Although it's titled as a birth and wellness center, they also provide a long list of additional services. This center provides a healthy middle ground between a hospital birth and a home birth. It's focused on the comfortability and support for these new mothers and their newborns.
The whole entire model of how we learn how to care for women is on a holistic approach. We view this as a stage in your life rather than a medical problem to be managed. I'm also healthy in the middle where if those things aren't working and we need medication, let's move to that. But, whatever works best for people.
The Odessa Birth and Wellness Center is a block from MCH's ER doors if any procedure gets to a point of needing an OR. And a local band is taking their musical talents to the Grand Ole Opry House in Nashville, Tennessee. The southern rock group Treaty Oak Revival formed 4 years ago and began performing in bars in Midland and Odessa. And now they'll be taking the stage in Nashville, where famous artists like Johnny Cash, Dolly Parton, and Willie Nelson have all performed. Treaty Oak Revival's style of play is a mixture of different genres. All 5 members come from a different musical background, but they consider themselves a southern rock group. They've been able to perform across the country for the last couple of years, but this opportunity is something they didn't expect to come so soon.
It's a huge deal for us. It's basically one of, if not, depending on who you ask, the biggest honor you could have in country music is to get invited to play the Grand Ole Opry. So
Canty says that when people come to their shows, they can expect a mixture of metal, country, jazz, rock, and more. Although 2 of the 5 members aren't from West Texas, they still claim this area because of where they started. You're looking now at today's top headlines shown here in real time with real viewers on CBS7.com. You can see all these stories and more by downloading our app or visiting our website, CBS7.com. And still ahead, the Midland Animal Services is sharing its training process with West Texans. We've got a look at that up next in your news in the community on CBS 7 News at 9. After a summer of communication issues, criticisms, and a restructuring under the Midland Fire Department, Midland Animal Services is sharing its training process with West Texans. This week, staff trained on animal cruelty and blood sport investigation, as well as other administrative duties. The director of the shelter wants all staff to be able to recognize animal cruelty and the kind of legal scope that comes with those cases.
That they are comfortable out in the field recognizing the different signs of abuse, and then if they do have that, what would be the next steps, so they're comfortable making those decisions.
Shelter staff are also trained on euthanizations and being able to process the emotional toll that can take on an employee.
Well, we are going to be looking at some changes in our weather forecast. More wind on the way, maybe even a thunderstorm. We'll talk about it and what's going to do to the weekend forecast up next.
Now, from the CBS7 First Alert Weather Center, here's Chief Meteorologist Tom Tiefertiller.
It was a warm one today by February 1st standards. Look at these temperatures into the mid to upper 70s, 80 degrees in Fort Stockton. And again, these temperatures running 10 to 20 degrees above where we should be this time of the year. It does look like it's going to cool off with this next front. That's going to bring a lot of changes as we have that big storm system moving onshore across the Pacific Northwest. This whole system is going to sweep across with a front. It's going to bring a lot of wind, but also the possibility of a thunderstorm or two to our forecast coming up for tomorrow. But across the state, everybody was enjoying the nice spring weather out there, or spring-like weather, I should say. 73 in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, 72 in Houston, 80 in Del Rio, 81 down towards Laredo, and temperatures were in the low 80s across Big Bend National Park and those lower elevations, and Terlingua a little bit earlier today, so some of the warmest here in West Texas. All this is going to change as we see that next front start to approach the area. Some low clouds in the morning hours across parts of the northeast, eastern Permian Basin into the lower Trans-Pecos. Those are going to really define the areas where we could be looking at some thunderstorms starting up after about 2 o'clock or so, maybe a couple of showers into the mountain areas. But again, looks like parts of the Permian Basin is where we're going to see the thunderstorm activity again after about 2 o'clock, continue at about 5 o'clock or so, and it really gets going here. Further off to the east and southeast you go as we'll see things start to clear out a little bit, but plenty of wind on the way, not only for tomorrow, but especially coming up on Saturday. Now the severe weather outlook again, isolated strong to severe thunderstorm. Big Spring south towards Rankin, McCamey, Iran, Sheffield, and Dryden all included in that, in areas east, with the best severe weather threats staying further off to the south and southeast. If we see anything, large hail, strong damaging winds will be the main severe weather threats. The biggest deal is going to be the wind. Starting up in the morning hours, gusty out of the south to southeast and coming around to the southwest to west with the approach of that front tomorrow. And we'll see gusts upwards of 30 to 40 miles an hour, but they get even stronger as we push in towards Saturday, seeing gusts above 60 miles an hour, a possibility in these orange shaded areas where a high wind watch is in effect. Watch out for blowing dust. Elevated fire danger concerns to go along with that. So it's going to be quiet overnight tonight. Kind of mild out there, only down to 50 degrees. Lower 70s tomorrow with the possibility of a couple of thunderstorms in the afternoon hours for Groundhog Day. And then we're going to see a lot of dust with that front, possibly damaging winds in our forecast, and cooler temperatures for the first half of the weekend.
Still ahead, we all love to laugh, but there's a time and place for comedy. Up next, how funny street signs could actually be causing problems. Federal officials want to put the brakes on funny traffic signs, issuing new guidelines to road safety. Chris Van Cleve reports.
From reminding you to use your blinker in Boston or oh hi whoa, watch your speed in Columbus, to a Swifties take on safety in Arizona, states having a little fun to get drivers focused on traffic safety has a habit of going viral. But all kidding aside, it's a feeling apparently not shared by regulators in Washington. No joke, new guidelines from the Federal Highway Safety Administration say states should avoid the use of humor and pop culture references because it may confuse or distract drivers. While not an outright ban on fun, they'd prefer messages like unbuckled seatbelts, fine plus points. A guideline going over worse than pairing peas and guac in Arizona.
Yeah, I thought it was a joke at first.
State Rep David Cook chairs the Transportation Committee.
Those friendly, humorous reminders, I believe, have a very positive impact overall on the millions of people we have on the roads every day.
Arizona's Department of Transportation has been using humor on its 300-plus message boards since 2015 and holds an annual contest to submit fun safety messages. Last year, there were some 3,700 entries. In Wisconsin, John Riemann spent several years coming up with memorable traffic safety messages.
I find it unfortunate. I think that there is a great opportunity to message to the public and, to put out safety messages, to try to tie in pop culture or tie in things that are happening in your community.
Studies are mixed on how effective the humorous signs are. One found they command more attention from drivers. Another found a significant portion may not get the joke, but people do seem to like them.
You've got people reading it anyway, so what's it hurt to have a little sense of humor about it?
The new guidelines take effect in 2026, a debate over safety being written in lights. Chris Van Cleve, CBS News, Phoenix.
Still ahead tomorrow is Groundhog Day, but will he see his shadow? And more importantly, will Chief Meteorologist Tom Tieferteller see his? We talk about this next on CBS 7 News at 9. All right, are you ready for an early spring?
I am.
Me too. Groundhog Day is tomorrow, and Punxsutawney Phil will give us a possible hint of how much winter we'll have to endure. It's all in good fun and good for tourism. More than 30,000 people visit Gobbler's Knob in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, every year to celebrate Phil's forecast. Now, more importantly, Tom, what is your forecast?
Well, I'll probably see my shadow tomorrow morning.
More winter.
And, that usually means 6 more weeks of winter. Okay. And I kind of believe that because I think we're going to have another cold snap here over the next 14 days. But in the meantime, though, we're enjoying a spring treat right now. Unfortunately, we're going to see some spring thunderstorms, some spring winds in our forecast here over the next few days. It's going to be a mess on Saturday with areas of blowing dust.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us for CBS 7 News at 9 on the CW. We've got more news coming up tonight at 10.